Absolutely. We're covering a lot of really fun stuff today. So we're going to do lots of that, but sadly, not about genealogy this time.
Yes.
All my folks, all my ancestors settled up on Manitoulin. And there's actually, our cottage is still on the road where they're all set up. And it's actually called Irish Line.
Oh, there you go.
We are so very Irish.
Right on.
All righty. So I'm going to give folks a little bit of an extra chance to filter in because I started a little on the late side.
Do you have a poll this time?
I don't have a poll this time. I got distracted by having to learn about dwarf and minor planets instead.
It's a pretty small section.
It is a pretty small section, so we should be able to get through it quickly. A heads up for folks who are joining us as well. I'll let you know now. The June 3rd session, which should have been the last session, or June 1st. Anyway, the first week of June, the session that we were planning on having, we've decided to merge that with the session before, which is May 25th, I believe. Yep. And so we're going to have stars, deep sky objects, and then using the Observer's Handbook for observing, and a Q&A session all together next time. And that will be not next week because it is the May long weekend, but the week after, May 25th. So no session next week.
Right on.
Catching back on the last session on the week after that. Hi, everybody. And a reminder to folks, if you would like to chat in the chat box, make sure that you change your the little blue bar from all panelists to all panelists and attendees. That lets you talk to everybody. All righty. James, you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
I suppose I will share my screen with our section today. We're covering lots. We're covering dwarf and minor planets and comets and dust and meteors and all sorts of stuff. And you've just got, there are very many authors in all of these sections that we just have James and I here today. So we're going to be going over the section together. And we look forward to fielding your questions and checking out all of these cool, smaller scale things in the solar system.
Right on. Am I ready?
We are sharing. We've got the screen up. We're all set to go.
All right. The dwarf planets and minor planets. So people used to call these asteroids. People still do call them asteroids, minor planets. And there are very few dwarf planets. They're named there: Ceres, Pallas, Juno, Vesta, and keep going up, back up.
Oh, sorry, back up, my bad.
Back. We're talking about the dwarf planets. So there's only 3 of them: Eris, Ceres, and Pluto. So there's quite a controversy. You can see it in that second or third paragraph down where Mike Brown wrote his book, How I Killed Pluto and Why It Had It Coming. I get this question often when I'm doing outreach activities. What happened to Pluto? Why is Pluto no longer a planet? Well, Pluto is a planet. It's just a small one. It's a dwarf planet. The question arose, and this is the easiest way to explain it. If Pluto is a planet, then what is Eris or Maki Maki or Huawei or these other objects that were found beyond Pluto's orbit that are as large as Pluto or larger? In the case of Ceres, pardon me, Eris. Eris is slightly larger than Pluto. So if Pluto's a planet, then Eris should be a planet too. And what about the others, Maki Maki, and so on and so on? So the decision was made by the International Astronomical Union to devise a criteria that says this is a planet, and if you don't fit into this criteria, then you're not a planet. You're a dwarf planet or you're a minor body. Unfortunately, their criteria is flawed, because one of the things that it says is that you have to have cleared your orbit in order to be a planet. Well, Jupiter hasn't cleared its orbit. Earth hasn't cleared its orbit. Mars hasn't cleared its orbit. It's got moons.
Yeah, wait, how does that work?
Jupiter also has the Trojan satellites that are in its same orbit, but travel ahead of it. at one of the Lagrangian points. So it's a flawed criteria.
When they said that, were they just trying to were they trying to create a criteria that included just things in the Kuiper belt? Is that what they were going, and the Kuiper and the asteroid belt? Is that what they were going for?
No, they were trying to create a criteria that identified what a planet is.
Okay. It just seems weighted.
Yeah, it's flawed. And they know it, but they haven't done anything about it since way back when. So
I'm going to briefly mention, this is one of my favorite conversations to have with people, is how relating, I find that the naming of planets or deciding what's a planet and what's not a planet is all just a sake of like naming and categorizing. And so occasionally I'll have the conversation of, is a hot dog a sandwich? Does it count? What about an open face sandwich? What about an ice cream sandwich? Do they all count?
Exactly. Well, Pluto is a planet. There's no question about it. Just a small one. And because of the way its orbit is tilted to the rest of the solar system, it's probably one that was captured from out of the Kuiper belt many, many billions of years ago. Quite right.
Interesting.
So if we're talking about asteroids, then the proper name is minor planets.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Huh.
So you can see there on the next page in the description about Ceres, we have a finder chart for it and a little description up above. We also have a finder chart for Pluto with a description by Murray Paulson. Interestingly, Murray Paulson, we hoped to have him on the planets description last week. He couldn't make it, but he's just given me the 2021 version of the planets, and I've just completed it. This is well ahead of the game. I wasn't completed till mid-August last year.
Wow. He's learning, I guess. I don't know.
Well, he dug in. And just getting to Pluto there, we can see its orbit. It's in retrograde motion for a portion of the year, where it apparently goes backwards and then it starts to go forward again. You can see, for an example, at the left edge there is after April and the beginning of May, and then June, July is sort of in the middle, August over to the right, September. That's where it's going in retrograde. It's going backwards against the starry background.
Okay.
And we also see in the sky month by month, there's references to occultations of Pluto. I talked to Patrick Kelly about this a little bit last year, whether or not we would even include them. Because unless you actually knew where Pluto was, you wouldn't be able to tell if it was occulted or not. Because you can look up at the, you know, with a reasonably powered telescope, you know, maybe something that gathers lots of light, like a 20-inch telescope, you could probably pick out Pluto over the course of 3 or 4 nights and see its motion. So then you would know which one of the objects was Pluto, and then you would know which one got covered up by the moon.
Right. That does make it tricky, though.
A couple of them Patrick put into bold text, and I question that because you'd have a hard time picking it out. So we're not going to do that anymore. We won't be bolding any Pluto occultations, but it's an interesting exercise if something like that is what you want to do. And the finder chart shows where to find it with the right ascension across the bottom of the chart, declination on the left edge.
Okay. And then the individual little numbers and letters here, those are the month with the date, I assume?
That's the month and the date, yeah.
Okay.
So it starts on January on the right there, on the 11th of January, February 10th, March 11th, April 10th, and so on.
Right, okay. And then next.
I got to apologize to our American viewers because I mistakenly left the the meteorite chart that's found on page 254. It says it's the table of meteorite showers for 2020, but in fact, it's the one for 2019.
254.
I never updated it. It's on page
Whoops.
254. That's
We
the
have-
Canadian. That's the Canadian edition, or the standard edition.
Okay.
Looking at there, the U.S. edition, unfortunately, has the previous year's chart. But
I'll
there
find
is a chart on the website that you can download and print, paste into your book if you wish. It's at the updates
I'll look for the link right now. So in case anyone's
under the Observer's Handbook link. There's a link to updates, and in there is a 2020 chart.
there we go.
That's the one. 2020 edition updates.
Alrighty. So we have, I just wanted to go over the, and also I'm going to get you to pronounce this for me. I always pronounced ephemeris like that. Is that right?
Say this again.
Ephemeris?
Ephemerides.
Ephemerides for the plural.
Yes.
Okay, ephemerides. Okay.
You're-
What's that? Sorry?
sometimes hear it called ephemerides, but it's ephemerides.
Ephemerides.
And
Okay.
Page 22, you'll find a discussion about the.
Oh, wait, hold on. Page 22 or page?
22.
Okay.
You're on 20. Couple
Oh,
more.
sorry. Ah, 20. There we go.
There we go. Osculating orbital elements for 2020. So if you know any of those 6 things that are given in that list,
Mhm.
then you can determine the body's elliptical orbit. And the bodies that we're talking about are those that are found on page. Just got to get to 264.
264. 264.
Dan Green,
There we go.
Dan Green and
There we go.
Tsuchi Nakano from Japan
Comets.
provide us the comet list for the year, and those orbital information comes from the data that they did, that we just mentioned on page 22. So those are the visible comets that will be coming into view. If you're interested, there are all where they're going to be, the distance away, their eccentricity, sidereal period. Some of them are pretty long, like the top 2 or 3 there are 14 years, 10 years, 14 years. So that's how long it takes them to come back again.
Where's that's the sidereal period?
Yes.
Okay.
How long they'll take to be in the same part of the sky once more.
Okay.
People may remember Comet Petru that was discovered by Vance Petru from Regina Center at the Saskatchewan Summer Star Party in 2002. He had a brand new 20-inch obsessing telescope, and he was out viewing. Actually, he was star hopping to M1, the Crab Nebula, and he saw this little blob in the eyepiece, and he thought, that shouldn't be there. So he called his friend Rick Huziak over, and Rick says, I think you got a comet.
Oh, wow.
He was the discoverer. And it turns out that that particular comet had a 1,000-year period.
Wow.
And it went past Jupiter on its way to its orbit around the sun, and Jupiter's gravity influenced it. So it's now a 4.5-year period instead of a 1,000-year period. That's how influential Jupiter is on asteroids and comets, etc.
No kidding. Is that in this list, that comet that you mentioned?
Not visible this year.
Not this one? Okay.
It was last year.
That's very cool.
It takes 3.5 more years for it to come around.
Right. Yeah, we've got some time.
So in 2025, we'll see it probably. It's not a very bright comet, but it's a comet just the same.
Mm-hmm.
And these ones here, you can see they're, some of them are quite bright. And there's a explanation there for A, B, and C. On
Okay.
the right-hand column, B is okay, not exactly the best. A is favorable, and C is questionable, unfavorable.
Okay.
You may or may not see it, but the ones that are marked A should definitely be able to pick them out.
And I guess there's no magnitude because it changes and we don't know what it's going to do, right?
We have no idea. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And these are, so this brings up kind of an interesting question because we had Comet Atlas recently, which was interesting and new and discovered last year, and then it broke apart. So I presume then that these comets are a bit older and are a bit more stable.
Well, it could be again that it went past Jupiter, and Jupiter's gravitational influence shook it up enough that it broke up into smaller pieces, which is what happened to Shoemaker-Levy, not
Right.
that crashed into Jupiter. Jupiter captured it into its orbit, and eventually it crashed into Jupiter's surface. So,
Oh man, Jupiter.
yep, but it
So strong.
on its way and it broke up
Mhm.
20 some pieces, and that's what happened to Comet Atlas. And it's quite possible that Comet Atlas can survive going around the sun, come back out the other side in pieces,
And yeah, I guess it could, eh?
but highly unlikely.
Yeah.
It's possible, but not likely.
Okay. We had a quick question from Janine asking if you could repeat the name of the Saskatchewan discoverer and his comet.
Oh, Vance Petru, and it's Comet Petru.
How do you spell it?
Petrieu. Pardon me, IEW. There we
Okay.
go.
Thank
The
you.
spelling there.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
List. Yeah.
I'm going to repeat that. Arnold, thank you for sending it in. You sent it just to James and I, and so I'm going to resend it out to everyone so they can see.
Vance was the winner of the Society Service Medal last year, and he's been the Regina Center president and vice president, among other things. He's the vice president right now. Very active in the Regina Center.
And then speaking briefly, where page are we on? Speaking briefly about David Levy, who discovered that Shoemaker-Levy comet, he wrote the next section about observing comets, which is all words, so we're not going to go over it. I assume, eh, James?
Let's go back a little bit to page 260.
Okay.
There we go, getting close. So the meteorite impact craters in North America, a lot of people are fascinated and interested to discover that there's lots of craters around that they don't even know about. There's a couple in Saskatchewan that people don't know about, and there's a really interesting one that right on the Manitoba-Ontario border.
Okay.
You can see it there. It's marked as number 59. West Hawk Lake in Manitoba is a crater.
59. Cool. West Hawk Lake, Manitoba.
So it's a circular lake. There's lots of people have questioned about Hudson Bay. Hudson Bay at the left edge, or pardon me, the right edge, east edge, has what looks like a cone in the middle of a crater. But the problem is that there's no other evidence that that is a crater. Most craters have shatter cones. So it's an indication of high compression from the impact. Or there's a spray of material out from the crater that you could say that, well, there's a crater wall or a ridge or something like that, but there is nothing to give us any indication that that's the case around Hudson Bay. It's a false crater. But there are 55 of them, or more than that, 60 of them in North America.
There's that one, Sudbury, basically the entirety of Sudbury is a crater, is it not?
Yeah, and it was a large nickel deposit from the asteroid. The asteroid was almost solid nickel.
And so they are quite the mining town.
Oh yeah. And there's a few others around that, if you know where they are, you say, oh yeah, that's a crater. But others are not quite so obvious because they're below what might have been glaciated area, and the glacier smoothed it out, so there's no longer an indication that there was a crater there. There's one just east of Melville here, about, well, I don't know, about 8 miles east. It's called Crater Lake. But in fact, what it is a salt cavern underground that the salt eroded away with water, and it left this huge hole in the ground full of water.
Oh, wow.
It looks like a crater, but it's just a salt cavern that collapsed, basically. We have quite a few of those in Saskatchewan. We're sitting on a big bed of what was an ocean bed, and it's all salt and potash. So we're going to move along. Comets, as you said, Observing Comets by David Levy. He's a very famous comet hunter. He writes for our journal from page 265.
Oh, there we go.
He's the honorary president of the Montreal Center and the Kingston Center.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're very proud of having David as part of their group. And he's a prolific writer. He's written lots of books. He's just recently written his autobiography, and the RASC published it.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. We'll throw out a promo. If anybody's looking for A Night Watchman's Journey, you can buy it on our website. That's his book that he just wrote.
That's right.
I'll find it.
So he gives a description in there about how to go about comet hunting. I've got a guest here.
Oh, hello.
This is our kitten.
Who's that?
She's shy. Kitten.
Oh, a kitten.
Kitten with an eye.
Oh,
yeah,
she's talkative.
I'm out of here. So David goes about talking how to discover a comet there, and he says that it's almost impossible now with the automated surveys that are going on. Automated surveys will pick them up long before a visual telescope can see one, but he still searches every day, every clear day.
Well, and then at least with I've already forgotten, Petrio, he found a comet in the time of surveys, correct?
Yeah.
So there you go. It's possible.
It's possible to do. Yeah. Right on. And then interplanetary dust. As Roy Bishop explains here, this is one of the brightest objects in the sky. Well, it's not an object, it's a phenomena caused by dust in the orbit around the sun. And we're in it. The interplanetary dust is in the ecliptic between, oops, there goes. I might have to break away. I think that's a call for me.
Okay,
I was just going to mute.
I will briefly, while James is answering the phone, go over. I noticed we missed some of the charts up here. I am not particularly good at these things, but these, I believe, I wanted to just go over them quickly because we hadn't really talked about them. Excuse me. But I believe this is, the list of planetary occultations. So it's times when I believe one of the planets, this is page, for anyone following along, it's page 250. When one of the planets or minor bodies goes in front of another star. And so this will have the list of the bodies and then the stars that they're going in front of. Presumably the bold means that it is more interesting. Noteworthy events marked in bold. And so you can kind of pick out, if you're interested, you can pick out the most interesting ones, like Mars occulting the very catchily named star 0035001871. There is actually, let me grab my notebook. Oh, I don't have it with me. There's an occultation coming up, not an occultation, it's conjunction coming up this year with Venus and Regulus, which is a relatively bright star in Leo the Lion. And so I'm hoping that maybe Phil will be able to jump in with the date, because my date book is all the way on the other side of the room and I don't want to run off and leave you with no presenters. And so that'll be coming up, I believe, sometime a little bit later in this season, I would guess. I'll take you with me. Let me grab that. They're kind of, especially with Venus and Regulus, Regulus is relatively bright. And so it ends up being quite the, thanks Phil for looking, it ends up being quite the show. Alrighty, let's see what the date book says. That's going to be happening. Let's see. If anybody has any questions that they think I might be able to answer, feel free to ask them now as well. Let's see, let's see. We actually have a crescent moon occulting Venus before that happens. I can mention that briefly too. Come on. Nope, nope, nope. My apologies for the delays, folks. Have I missed it, Phil? There we go. It's in September, September 2nd. Venus is going to be within half a degree of Regulus, which half a degree is half of the width of your pinky when it's stretched full out away from you, observing in the night sky. So it's going to be pretty darn close. So keep an eye out for that occultation. I have been vamping so hard, James.
You're doing very well.
I just briefly went over the charts here that show the planetary occultations of stars, and I think I got it right. Because we didn't mention those, but essentially the bold is the interesting stuff, and it's planets blocking out the light from some of the stars, right?
Correct.
Perfect. Okay.
This is a very short section, but there's lots of information in it. So
there is.
Fireballs there. That's Phil McCausland from Western University. And here we have Meteor Identification. I actually asked Peter Brown from Western University to join us today, but I never got a response on it. Maybe he didn't get my email. I hope that's what happened.
And there was actually a question in the comments from Janine asking if you could comment on the Rask collection of meteorites by any chance.
Oh, yeah, we got quite a collection of them. P257.
Page 257.
Oh, I see what you're asking. Yeah, okay. Somebody's asking how to get the YouTube.
Yep, I'm on that one right now. I'm about to grab that link. Because
the
I do
Rask collection is in the Toronto office, and it's the collection. A lot of it was donated by an anonymous donor, and they're not large chunks. There's some of them are smaller than your fingernail, you know, your small fingernail, but they are chunks of a meteorite. And there's Randall Rosenfeld, our archivist, is in charge of it, and he's looking after that collection. So it's in the annex to the office. I think that's where you have your desk, isn't it, Jenna? Or
I'm luckily in the main office. For a long time, they had all of the desks in that room with all of the archive material as well. And I heard many times that they were getting sick of whacking each other in the face every time they tried to move.
Yeah.
But they since if anyone, well, not right now, obviously, but once we are back in the office, if anyone's interested in seeing the archive collection, let us know and we can figure out if a way to show you guys around. There's some really cool stuff in there.
Yes, I don't know exactly how many pieces we have, but it would be easy enough to send an email to Randall Rosenfeld. His email is in the journal every issue that he submits something to. So you could easily ask him to give a description of the collection, how many pieces there are and where they came from and that sort of thing.
Yes, and if anyone's interested in finding out more about that, let me know, because you all have my email and I'll type it out just in case. Let me know and I can connect you to Randall as well. Maybe once we're back in the office, actually, if you guys are interested in the collection, we can set up a virtual tour with Randall of some of the samples in there. That'd be kind of fun.
Judy Black is asking.
Yes, we'll go back to dust.
Page 268.
There we go.
Did it get cut short? Yes, it got cut short. Was the phone call was about our other cat. We needed to talk to the vet.
Oh.
So some of these things that we see, like the zodiacal light, for an example, is you can find references to it in the sky month by month. Patrick Kelly's section, it tells you where it or when it would be visible. You know, in the evening sky in the west after sundown, for an example. So we're looking into the plane of the ecliptic of the galaxy, and we're seeing dust between the planets, interplanetary dust. So that's what we're actually seeing. And it's pretty indistinct, but it's bright. It's the third brightest phenomenon behind the sun and the moon.
That's wild.
If you don't know what you're looking for, you probably would miss it. You know, if it's right at sundown as the sun has gone below the horizon, and there's this large cone of dust. There's a picture of it right there from Michael Watson's collection.
I always steal Michael Watson's photos to show people things because I know how to find him on Flickr. So he's one of our national board members.
If you know what you're looking for, it looks like light pollution off in the distance, but it goes way up high in the sky. So it's obviously more than just light pollution. So we're actually seeing particles of dust being backlit from the sun. The sun is behind the particles and they're lit up. It's much like if you were shining a light at a screen from behind. So
that's very cool. Do you have to be, you don't have to be in a particularly dark area to see it, or do you have to be able to distinguish it?
Not necessarily a very dark area, because it's right at sundown. The sky will still be partially lit up. It's before the sun reaches astronomical twilight.
Okay.
If you're in civil twilight, the sun is 6 degrees below the horizon. Nautical twilight is 12 degrees below. Astronomical twilight, it's 18 degrees below, and it's black, unless you've got light pollution. So if you're in civil twilight or nautical twilight, the sky is still lit up, even though the sun is below the horizon.
All right. Okay, cool.
And the Gegenschein is another phenomena. It's a faint, it looks like moonlight. It's very faint, but it says in the description there, haze or moonlight. Nearby bright stars will obliterate it. You won't be able to see it. So
interesting. I've never heard of that one.
It's in the opposite part of the sky to where the sun goes down.
Oh, okay.
So if you're looking at the sunset looking west, it's in the east.
Interesting.
It's behind you.
That's really cool. Is there any reason for it?
Yeah, you're at the anti-solar point.
Okay.
If you know where the anti-solar point is, you can see the brightening in the sky there. And that's the Gegenschein.
Cool. All righty.
And that takes us to the next section.
Yes, which will be covered
next week.
Next week. There was a question about
not next week.
Oh no, yeah, sorry. Wow, thank you. That was a slip. The week after next, May 25th.
Yes.
There was, if anybody has any questions, now's the time to send them out. There was a question about accessing former.
Got the answer to the earlier sessions.
The earlier sessions are all on the same website that you have to be logged in to see it. Let me grab the chat, but they're linked on the RASC website. There we go, right there. There was one question, excuse me, there's one question about some of Comet Swan and Comet Atlas, some of the recent comets. I'm not sure, James, if you can answer this. I have a vague answer. Are they in the northern sky?
I believe they are. Pretty sure that Comet Atlas was going through the Cassiopeia constellation. I'm not sure about Comet Swan, but I'm pretty sure that they're in the same area.
I think so. I know that I've been seeing a lot of posts on social media of Comet Swan, which is visible from New Zealand right now, and it's just making its way into the northern hemisphere. But it's got this great big long tail, which should be interesting. I'm not sure if it's going to be as fabulous as it is expected to be, but I do think it's like near-ish the horizon right now. Comet Atlas I do remember Comet Atlas being further up north by like the Big Dipper, Cassiopeia type area. I'm not sure anymore where it is, but it's just not going to get as bright as it.
No, because it broke apart.
Yeah, it broke apart.
Yeah.
And who knows about Comet Swan? Hopefully it'll get bright too. But I'm gonna grab a photo of Comet Swan because it does look really beautiful.
There's a suggestion there from Janine McGilvery. If you can talk to Randall Roosevelt, we'll be putting together a virtual tour of the meteorite collection at the national office.
Yes, we will. I'll work on that when we can see each other again. Randall is a really interesting fellow, and he would have a lot to say about a lot of the stuff in there. We did actually do a tiny mini series, which I ended up never releasing, but I have the footage from it about a couple of pieces in the archives, and so I'll do my best to get those out. There's Comet Swan from the astronomy photo.
Comet Atlas is in Camelopardalis right now. This is just below the Big Dipper.
Comet Swan is in Pisces. Okay, so it's getting close.
Yeah, it won't be long.
Won't be long. Is the tail of the comet longer than 1 astronomical unit? Ooh, okay, this is beyond my knowledge. I don't know how close Comet Swan is or how long the tail appears to be. So I have no idea.
It can definitely be millions of kilometers long.
Mm-hmm.
But an astronomical unit would reach from the sun to the Earth, so probably not.
That'd be really long.
Like 150 million kilometers. Not likely. It likely wouldn't be that long. Even not as long as from the Earth to the moon.
No.
Same. It could span quite a distance.
Mm-hmm.
But not astronomical units, no.
No, it's all good, Janine. I don't mind. And I think it would actually be really fun. And it'd be nice for, we can offer till the cows come home for people to come and visit us, but it doesn't make any sense for the folks who don't live, within 50 miles of Toronto. So it'd be a nice way to make the collection accessible. And there's some really cool stuff. That was Randall's tour of our archives room is what got me so excited to work at the RASC in the first place, because he had so much cool stuff in there. And so we'll do our very best.
Right on. Well, that's all I have for today.
And I'd say that's all we really need to talk about. That covers the whole section. And that means that if we don't have any more questions, let me just take one quick look. We're clear on the Q&A and we're clear on everything else. And so we'll see you guys in 2 weeks, not next week, but 2 weeks from now to talk about stars and the deep sky, which we're going to be joined by Alistair Ling for that. Alistair joined us for the Sky Month by Month section as well. So he's going to come back. Which we're very excited to have him back. So please do join us for that, especially if you're interested in deep sky stuff. And have yourselves a wonderful long weekend. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks James for covering the section for us.
No problem. My pleasure. See you next.
See you next time. Take care everybody.